Welcome back. So today ended up being kind of a quiet trade deadline day, but it was trade deadline week. As was stated by, I think it was Kevin Cheveldayoff that said trade deadline week, moves were made early. And I've been saying, too, for like the last month, that teams making the moves earlier makes a lot of sense. And waiting until the last moment, you can make some mistakes. I don't think there were mistakes made today. I really don't. I think that now James Van Riemsdyk is still a member of the Philadelphia Flyers. There was a trade that was kind of worked out with the Red Wings. However, the Red Wings needed to make another move in order to free up the cap space to acquire Van Riemsdyk, and that fell through. And Philadelphia wasn't getting offers, any phone calls on Van Riemsdyk up until basically the last minute. So while the Flyers and Chuck Fletcher are taking a lot of flack, and I get it, I totally get it, the reality is you can only make the deals that are offered to you and only if they make sense to you. So the deals that took place after the last video I posted this morning, so this isn't the entire deadline. I'm going to take a look at the deadline, though. I want to take a look at how teams did, and we can discuss who got better and who didn't. Dmitry Kulikov is now a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, so a defenseman's added. Going the other way, Brock McGinn, who cleared waivers, ended up in the minors. I would think Anaheim calls McGinn back up, gives him a few games before the end of the year, see what they can do. They also get a 2024 third-round pick, and they retain 50% of Kulikov's cap hit. So for Pittsburgh, and I know there's been a lot of criticism about them getting older, the way I see it is Hextall's trying to fix the problem, and he feels that more veterans will be able to fix this problem. Pittsburgh is, in my eyes, trying to make it so they can go on one last run, that they understand that a lot of their core is older, and so you've got to try to go for one more run. It's interesting, too, that Pittsburgh and Washington are not in completely dissimilar situations, but they've handled it completely different. Washington more along the lines of selling, right? Jordan Greenway is a member of the Buffalo Sabres. Love this deal for both Greenway, for the Sabres. I kind of love it for the Wild as well. Greenway's been in the doghouse, and he hasn't been scoring for Minnesota for quite some time. And so there needed to be some kind of a change going on here. Going to Minnesota, a 2023 second-round pick, as well as a 2024 fifth. Again, not a bad return, considering the year that Greenway had, and that it was clear that it wasn't working out for him in Minnesota. For Buffalo, this is an additional forward, gives him a little bit of sandpaper. I presume he'll play on their third line, but he's a young player, and so Buffalo, while not buying so much at the deadline, they did not sell at the deadline either, and so I mean, they're still in the hunt. Buffalo's still in the hunt for a playoff spot, and if you're a Buffalo fan, that's really all you can ask for right now. Oscar Sundqvist has been traded to Minnesota, so Minnesota loses Greenway. They add Sundqvist. Going to Detroit as a 2023 fourth-round pick. Sundqvist is not the same level of player he was in 2019 when he was with the Blues and they won the Stanley Cup, but he's a guy with a lot of experience. He can crash the net. He can provide a little bit of something to the Minnesota Wild that I think they need. And again, experience is important at this time of year. I like the return for Detroit on a player that clearly they weren't going forward with. Detroit, it was a sell of sorts, but the fact that they were in on James Van Riemsdyk, which just would have been a pure rental, tells me that Yzerman kind of wanted to add and probably was going to get a deal with Philadelphia that would have been pretty darn solid. But in the end, Detroit does trade out some money, and so we'll see what they do over the offseason. I would say that if you're disappointed with what your team did or didn't do today, it's easy to name winners and losers at the deadline. But if you're cheering for a team that's well outside of the playoffs, the draft is going to be where it's decided whether or not this was really and truly a loss. The draft is where we're going to see a lot of guys. I think a lot of guys are going to get moved at the draft. It could be a bonkers draft this year. The Ottawa Senators pick up Patrick Brown from the Philadelphia Flyers, depth forward, for a 2023 sixth-round pick. Ottawa was expected to be quiet today. They absolutely were. Brown is a fourth-line forward, good pickup. Again, you're getting a guy who's got experience. It's a good move. The only minor league move I have on the board, and there were a few other minor league moves that I don't think moves the needle either way. Radim Zohorna ends up in Toronto. He's bounced around a bit. Dryden Hunt ends up in Calgary. He's bounced around a bit. Kyle Dubas saying that this was done for Marlies reasons. That Zohorna he felt would help the Marlies, and that he was trying to make sure that the Marlies got better at the deadline as well. So it's not just about Toronto to him, not just about the Maple Leafs anyways, but it's about the Toronto Marlies as well. Then the three-team deal that was finally, announced and what it was after we started the live stream. Nick Bonino in Pittsburgh. Montreal is the team that barters this deal. So they launder Foligno to Pittsburgh from San Jose. They get the rights to Tony Sund. They also get a 2024 fifth-round pick. They retain 50% of the salary on Nick Bonino. So San Jose doesn't have any retention here. They get the rights to Arvid Henriksen. They get a 2023 seventh-round pick and a conditional 2024 fifth-round pick. So not an awful trade for San Jose for a player in Bonino that clearly, they feel either they can replace next year. They're not overly worried about losing. For Montreal, they get something for nothing. They're retaining salary on Bonino, and they get a draft pick and the rights to a prospect. So, again, smart move by Montreal there. One of the more surprising ones to me of the trades made this day, Rasmus Asplund, gone to Nashville. Asplund, it doesn't feel like it's that long ago. He was seen as one of the not A-level prospects, but a decent B-level prospect with some upside, and that he was going to be part of this group in Buffalo that was going to, help this team get better. But he's now a member of the Nashville Predators, and all it cost them was a 2025 seventh-round pick going to Buffalo. I'm honestly kind of surprised Asplund wasn't worth more than a seventh-round pick from Nashville. But we'll see how he does in Nashville and what goes on from here. I understand he hasn't had a great year. I get it. But I'm kind of surprised that that's all it costs, that there wasn't a team in the NHL that felt that Asplund was worth more than a seventh. So it shows his stock has really dropped off. The trade that makes history is the one between Calgary and Arizona. It is the first time two brothers have been traded for each other. As soon as that came up on the screen during the live stream, I was really surprised because, I knew Nick Ritchie was, an asset that had definitely, I thought, improved in his time in Arizona. And I understand what Calgary would trade for him, why they would trade for him. They also pick up Troy Stecher. Stecher now rejoins some of his former Canuck teammates in Calgary as the Vancouver-Calgary overlap continues. I like this move for Calgary. Going to Arizona, Brett Ritchie, so the brother, and Connor Mackey. Connor Mackey, and it's interesting too because Valimaki's already in Arizona. Mackey, it's a similar story. It just wasn't working out in Calgary. Up against a brick wall, glass ceiling, however you want to look at it. And so I think both teams did well here. I don't think there's necessarily a winner and a loser, but it does show that for Calgary, they're not full-on buyers, but this does feel like a move made by a team that is still trying to compete and get into the playoffs. So Calgary didn't sell today. There was all this discussion about big names and who might go. That's why on the channel I didn't get into that discussion very much, even the Karlsson stuff. I did not see Erik Karlsson going anywhere at the deadline. And it's not just salary cap either. It's just, those big trades, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to throw those together, and I think it's easier to do that in the off season. So I think for Calgary, I think this is an indicator that, this team's still in it. They're only 5 points out, but they didn't go and trade out a bunch of future assets to get better, and they didn't really switch things up in the locker room that much. Minnesota, John Klingberg picked up from the Anaheim Ducks. Rough start to the season for Klingberg. He's been better lately. For Anaheim, they get Andre Schuster. Schuster's kind of bounced around a little bit now. Nikita Nestorenko also going to the Anaheim Ducks, and a 2025 fourth-round pick. So picking up McGinn, picking up Schuster. You're picking up guys that you can use down the stretch. You know that you're not making the playoffs. You know you're finishing towards the bottom of the standings. But it's important to still be able to put a lineup out there that can play because you don't want to be bringing up rookies before they're ready. You don't want to be, hurting your AHL team so much. So I get why this trade takes place. I think that when Anaheim signed Klingberg, they knew they'd trade him out. I think they'd hoped for more than Schuster, Nestorenko, and a 2025 fourth, but he just hasn't played up to that contract. Now with Klingberg going to Minnesota, he should be motivated to play well because, again, Klingberg is going to be a free agent this summer. He's going to want to sign a longer-term deal than the 1 year he got. I think he overplayed his hand last summer, and I think that cost him, and so now he has to be a little more cognizant of that. And we'll see how he does in Minnesota. But I'm wearing a Minnesota Wild jersey because I like the addition of Klingberg. I like that they traded out Greenway, and I like the addition of Sundqvist. They're minor differences, they're minor changes. There weren't any major changes made today. Those were made by teams earlier this week. The Chikrin deal for Ottawa, the Orlov slash Hathaway deal for the Bruins, which so far has paid dividends. It's like Boston went from being the best team in the league to being even bester. And I don't know. Maybe that means Alan Bester should be part of the organization. Quote and put him in the organization because they're bester. And then look for somebody whose last name is Bestest, I guess. Anyways, there you go. That's the deals again. If you're looking for a trade that's not on the board, odds are it's either a minor league deal, two minor leaguers switched in places, which is not really a needle mover. That again is more for the AHL teams. And there's trades I've already reported on the channel earlier today. Before the live stream went up, I made sure that I'd put a video on the channel of the trades that had already happened. I didn't have a board for the live stream today because when we've had a board in the background for the live stream, people feed false rumors, and you end up with the chat being filled with people saying, well, this guy's been traded, and then you can't even tell what's happened. And then there's trades that take place, and the details that we first hear can end up being wrong, and then the chat's filled with, you need to change this, you need to change this, you don't have the, why isn't this one up? So it's easier just to do it this way. Just have the conversational aspect during the live stream, and then I can do this video after. I think it makes it easier, a little less stressful, and it weeds out the fake trades being thrown out in the chat. As funny as some of it can be, absolute sure, fine. It's also important to make sure that the real trades are being reported on and discussed. And so there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. I will say this. I don't think this trade deadline was more ridiculous than other trade deadlines, but it took place over a week. So we had more time to digest the trades that were taking place when you have 5 here, 6 here, 4 there, than when you have 25 of them all at once. And so a lot of them slip through the cracks. In a normal trade deadline, some of these wouldn't really be getting discussed. We'd be discussing all the other bigger moves, but with it being more spread out this year, I think it makes for a better experience. I think it's more fun, and it makes it feel more like a chess match. So if you're not happy with what your general manager didn't get done today, wait until the draft, and I think you'll see things change. I know for Vancouver, there was a lot of hope that something big was going to happen. I never once reported on the channel, oh, Besser's going to go, JT Miller's going to go, because I just didn't see financially how to make it work. And I think that's probably what submarined it. I think it's just, it's the money. Guys with term, it's really tough to trade guys with term. A lot of the names on this board, expiring contracts, even then you might have to launder it through a third party. This is going to happen next year too, is my guess. And then once the salary cap starts to go up by a more substantial amount, it should be the following season, then we'll see more normal trade deadline stuff. But it's still interesting. GMs having to get creative. Teams getting draft picks for just retaining some money. And so they're got to be happy about it too. But let me know your thoughts, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.